Hello, I'm Esther Githui. It's Friday, April 15th. This is Africa 54. South African authorities released emergency funds on Friday to help tens of thousands of people left without shelter, water and electricity after flash floods washed away homes and roads. Nearly 400 people are dead on the country's east coast. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
South African authorities were releasing emergency funds on Friday to help tens of thousands of people left without shelter, water and electricity by flash floods that washed away homes and roads and killed more than 340 people on the country's east coast.
As you can see, how we suffering. Yeah, to get water. We're coming from Amandle to fetch water.
I think we should have been more because a lot of people stay in places where they can't get information of what's happening, and most of them have been flooded already. So I think maybe they could have done something to tell us what's going to happen.
Local authorities have estimated the damage at several billion rand and that more would follow. This week's floods in Kwa-Zulu-Natal province have knocked out power lines, shut down water services, interrupted operations at one of Africa's busiest ports, and scattered highways and beaches with debris. Police, army, and volunteer rescuers on a Friday widened the search for dozens still missing, 5 days after more than 340 people died in the deadliest storm to strike South Africa's coastal city of Durban. The unprecedented floods, which affected nearly 41,000 people, left a trail of destruction and several hundred people dead.
From 3 days ago, just then come from here. Yeah, so there's what I don't know come from where. It was full everywhere. We lose everything. We can't find everything now. We're starting building again.
With the government coordinating the search and rescue operation, the official number of people missing in KwaZulu-Natal province stood at 55. A fleet of cars and helicopters carrying police experts set out early Friday to comb through a valley in Malina Hills suburb west of Durban to look for at least 12 people reportedly missing in the floods.
The acute phase of rescue is mostly over. Currently, unfortunately, most of our work is body recoveries. So from this morning, we have gone to various areas that have been identified to have where there are lost persons, and we've been searching for them. We have found a couple. Unfortunately, they have passed away, but it's at least we could give some of the families relief.
Thousands of survivors are left homeless after their houses were destroyed are being housed in shelters scattered across the city, sleeping on cardboards, sheets and mattresses laid on floors.
I just think things are not looking really good. It doesn't make me feel good at all, seeing the place like this. I mean, we always like coming to the beach, you know, so it's just terrible.
Meanwhile, volunteers with hand gloves and trash bags fanned across the city's beaches to pick up debris left by the massive storms ahead of an expected surge of Easter weekend holiday makers. Paul Ndiho, VOA News.
As the death toll from flooding continues to rise, residents try to salvage their belongings and their homes. David Doyle has more.
Residents of South Africa's Kwa-Zulu-Natal have been picking up the pieces after one of the worst floods in recent history ravaged the area. Authorities say more than 300 people have died, and the province has been declared a disaster zone after heavy rains flooded homes and washed away bridges and roads. In an informal settlement in Durban, Soli Malizole was inspecting his home on Thursday.
We are still trying to rescue something that we can so that it can be useful to us. Because now it's bad. It's bad. Everything is bad. We don't have anything. Everything is bad. I don't even have a bed.
Hundreds of people have also been displaced in the floods. At one community centre, serving as a shelter, Akona Mfinkane said she was waiting for government help.
We tried to move away from the place and then we walked here to the civic hall. Then when it was raining and we were walking with children and everyone else started to come up.
Scientists say global warming is worsening the impact of the sea-borne weather systems that Africa's southeastern coast is particularly exposed to. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, who visited the area on Wednesday, has promised that the government will help. He described the disaster as a catastrophe of enormous proportions, adding that it was obviously a part of climate change.
David Doe of Reuters filed that report. Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan visits the White House Friday to hold talks with the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. Hassan, the only female head of state in Africa, is seeking investments as well as other commercial and economic partnerships with the United States. For more on President Hassan's visit, let's go live to VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara, who is standing by. Hello, Patsy. Give us the highlights of the meeting between President Hassan and Vice President Harris.
Well, Esther, before I give you the highlights, I think we should not neglect the historic nature of this meeting. Obviously, the first female president from Tanzania and the first African-American female vice president of the United States. So I just want to underline this historic nature of this meeting. And the substance of the meeting itself, as outlined by Vice President Harris, there are three areas. That is strengthening democracy, increasing trade and investment, as well as global health, including pandemic response. And I think out of these areas, the one that's Tanzania most interested in is on the issue of increasing trade and economic investment. In fact, the President Hassan said that if there's one message to the U.S. in her visit today is that to encourage U.S. private investors to put more money into Tanzania. As you know, her government has been trying to steer Tanzania away from its more inward-looking position in the prior administration to a trade destination, investment destination, and this is certainly one of those trips that she's making to several world capitals to offer exactly that message, to open Tanzania to the world.
Patsy, you mentioned the pandemic, and I wanted to ask you what the United States has done to help Tanzania respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We know the late President John Magufuli was a little slow to recognize the pandemic, but President Suluhu has taken a different stand. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so Tanzania is one of 11 countries, all of them in the African continent, that is part of Global Vax. This is the United States government's initiative to turn vaccines into vaccinations, because obviously we know that donating vaccines is not as easy as dropping off a container of vaccines in an airport. You need to be able to train vaccinators, you need the cold chain storage, and so on. So in March, Tanzania has received about $25 million of aid, in addition to the $42 million that it has already received from the U.S. government, plus the close to 5 million vaccine doses from the U.S. government. However, there is not a single dollar that has been approved by the U.S. Congress in response to the Biden administration's request for $5 billion for its global pandemic response, which means that by September, this money is going to run out. And unless U.S. Congress approves more money, there will be no more funding for Tanzania, as well as other global vax countries to continue their programs.
Patsy, thanks. VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara reporting live from the White House. After a long, delayed and chaotic voting process that was marred by deadly violence and a power struggle between the country's top leaders, Somalia's newly elected lawmakers were sworn in Thursday. Security was tight as nearly 300 members of the lower and upper houses of parliament took the oath of office in a ceremony inside the airport zone in Mogadishu. President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, better known as Farmajo, issued a statement on Twitter hailing the historic event.
Today is great and very crucial for the people of Somalia, as the members of Somalia's 11th parliament were sworn in. In fact, the country has experienced hard times, and the election has been trailing for about 2 years. To reach this key point, the country is going in the right direction by holding the election on time. The speakers should soon be elected, and then a new president will be elected. After that, the country will have a new government.
After the lawmakers were sworn in, the two oldest members of each house were elected to the role of Speaker in line with the Constitution. Both houses are due to vote on a president, but that date has not been set. Police in the U.S. state of Michigan say 26-year-old Congolese immigrant Patrick Lyoya was driving a car with license plates that didn't match the vehicle, and that's why he was pulled over. But what ensued was another deadly shooting of a black man by a white police officer. Lyoya's family speaks out for the first time. Laura Bowman reports, and we warn you, this video contains disturbing images.
Hey, stay in the car! Stay in the car!
The video is difficult to watch. 1 minute, confused Congolese immigrant Patrick Lyoya is standing outside his car as a Michigan police officer approaches. He runs, a scuffle ensues, and here the officer stands over his lifeless body after shooting him in the head. Local police say the 26-year-old was stopped for a traffic violation. For the first time, his family members speak out.
Sikukuwa najua kama hapa mwa nchi.
I didn't know that here in America,
kunaweza kuwa execution ya mtu kwa kumuua.
There can be an execution style to kill someone.
Kwa kuua mtu na risasi.
To kill someone with a gun.
Tena uwawe na askari polisi mkubwa.
And to be killed by the police officer.
Kwa nia yangu mimi,
on my wish now,
nilikuwa najua kama ukikutana na polisi,
I knew that if you met with a police officer in America,
utakuwa umesave maisha yako.
You will be safe.
Tulivyokimbia vita kutoka kwetu.
When we ran away from war from Congo because we were in an area that was not safe, there was a war.
Tulizia tunakuja huku nakuja huku kuhifadhi watoto wangu watakuwa na amani.
And I thought that I came to a safe land, a heaven, a safe place.
And
I start thinking now, I'm surprised and astonished to see that my son is here, that my son has been killed with bullets.
The police officer who shot Patrick is on paid leave. His name has not been released.
There is an entire investigation being conducted by the Michigan State Police, which I do not have access to by design for conflict of interest. I will not make a policy decision, nor will I come to a conclusion of criminal law. At this time,
the attorney representing the family wants the officer charged and prosecuted.
Our leaders in the United States of America, we are condemning Russian soldiers for shooting civilians
kupiga civile watu population
in Ukraine, in the back of the head.
Nyuma ya kichwa kupiga masasi nyuma ya kichwa.
And protesters have taken to the streets demanding justice.
We got to speak up, and there has to be change that needs to be made, but change is not going to happen unless our voices are heard.
Police killings of black men and women in America hit raw nerves, and this latest incident does just that, harkening back to the 2020 murder of black man George Floyd by a white police officer in Minnesota, which set off racial justice protests across the country. Laurel Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
All right, we now go to our entertainment report, and right back in the studio from Algiers, there is our VOA Music Time in Africa host, Heather Maxwell. Heather, welcome back. I know you had a lot to do over there. What do you have for us today?
Thanks, Esther. Yes, that's right. I was able to interview Baltimore-based blues singer Black Assets. And here we talk about her music and what it was like for her to be in Algeria for the One Beat Sahara Music Festival and residency.
Why should I feel discouraged? Why do the shadows come?
How are you, Black Assets?
Oh, I am overjoyed. Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm just taken aback right now.
So where are you from?
I am from a very small town in Itabena, Mississippi. It's called Itabena, Mississippi. And I'm now half from Baltimore, Maryland. I've been in both spaces half of my life, so I like to claim them both. They both mean the world to me. A constant friend is here. His eye is on the sparrow.
What instrument do you play?
My voice is my greatest instrument. Then I play an instrument called the ukulele. It's a really small, 4-stringed instrument. Most people think it's a little guitar, but those are my main instruments. When I want to write music, I'll probably pick up an acoustic guitar or play on the keys, but there's not like my instrument.
And what got you singing in the first place?
Definitely gospel music. I grew up in Samuel Chapel United Methodist Church. I used to sing in this choir. I wanted to sing in it so bad. I listened to artists like Whitney Houston, Selena. I just wanted to be them. Like, I would perform on my grandmother's fireplace, and from the first time I started talking and just mimicking music, there was music always in our house, so it's just like, I would do that.
In one word, can you describe how it feels to be in Algeria in this program? Just one word.
Oh my gosh. Breathtaking?
How has it been really to be here with these people?
There will never be enough words to describe this experience, but from the time my foot stepped off the plane, I was overwhelmed, overjoyed. From the way the air felt on my skin, you know, breathing it in, you know, I was greeted with welcome home. Like literal strangers, distant families helping you with your bags. It wasn't like a fast movement, someone trying to rush past to get, it was just, it felt like love and calmness, a stillness. It was kind of emotional because I'm just like, music brought me here. Something that was like, it's been a long journey for me, for my people, for my ancestors, and for me to be here from my gift is purposeful.
What is the best new gesture or new sound that you've learned since you've been here?
I got a couple. Well, no, so the new word, and I apologize if I say it incorrectly, but I love walking by and people are like, ça va? And I'm like, love this, and they're talking, just seeing how are you? And I'm like, I'm good, I'm with God, I'm great. You know, I love that energy just every day, everywhere I go. I think I've fallen in love with Ganawa music.
What is the connection there?
It's a gospel connection.
In what way musically?
Definitely the rhythms.
The rhythms. What about the chord progressions?
Oh man,
that's what I was hearing. Blues.
Oh yeah,
I'm hearing blues like 1, 4, 5.
Okay,
1.
so we stay in 4. We stay in 4 in America. Yep. So we're gonna keep a steady beat. So what I'm noticing is that those harmonies, that 3-part harmony, staying steady throughout the piece. Yep. I'm also noticing the rhythm change. When the groove starts to get in, they'll switch it up on you, or they'll say and repeat the same thing. And sometimes when it's good, you have to keep it going. The rhythm may change. Someone may go and take a higher note, but the people feel it more intensely. You keep repeating it, and then they sing with you, and everybody's singing, and the next thing you know, it's just like there's an energy in the space that's overwhelming.
Is it almost trance-like?
You took the words out of my mouth. It's exactly the same. Like it's. I don't know if it's trance-like, but it's almost like we start to unite. No matter what the culture is or who you are in the space, if you're in the room, you almost can't help but feel it in your body. It's a wonderful experience.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's really inspiring.
Shukran, shukran, merci beaucoup. Des applaudissements pour Dakar, s'il vous plaît.
All right, and that's our entertainment report. Hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to listen to my Music Time in Africa hour-long radio program that's live or online on the weekends on FM and on shortwave. Or you can also watch it on YouTube channel, Facebook. Just search for Music Time in Africa or me, Heather Maxwell. Esther, back to you.
Heather, thanks. Heather Maxwell joins Africa 54 again next Friday with another exciting entertainment report. The United Nations has announced that it is releasing $100 million from its emergency fund for 7 hunger hotspots, 6 African countries and Yemen. UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric says that while armed conflicts, drought and economic turmoil are the main drivers of food insecurity in the 7 recipient countries, the conflict in Ukraine is making a dire situation worse.
Today, $100 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund was allocated to hunger hotspots in Africa and the Middle East as the spillover of the Ukraine conflict threatens to drive millions closer to famine. These funds will go towards relief projects in 6 African countries. Those are Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, South Sudan, Sudan, and Nigeria, as well as Yemen. The money will allow UN agencies and our partners to provide critical food, cash, nutritional help, as well as medical services, shelter, and clean water. Projects will also be tailored to help women and girls through a crisis that exposes them to additional risks.
The flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet is on its way to the ocean floor on Friday after what Kyiv says was a missile strike by Ukrainian forces. This is one of the heaviest blows yet to Moscow's war effort. Kyiv says it hit their cruiser Moskva with missiles fired from the coast. Russia did not confirm the attack, but says the ship sank while being towed in stormy seas after a fire caused by an explosion of ammunition. Moscow says more than 500 sailors were evacuated from the vessel. There has been no independent confirmation of the fate of the crew. Kyiv was hit overnight Friday by some of the most powerful explosions heard since Russian forces withdrew from the area 2 weeks ago. Moscow says it struck a plant in the capital that made and repaired Ukrainian missiles, including anti-ship missiles. An auto repair shop worker says he saw 3 blasts hit an industrial building in Vishnyev, which is just outside Kyiv, causing a blaze that was later put out by firefighters. Russia's defense ministry on Friday says it has captured a steelworks factory in Mariupol, one of the last industrial areas holding out in the besieged eastern city that has seen the war's heaviest fighting and the worst humanitarian catastrophe. Russia has used its naval power to blockade Ukrainian ports and threaten a potential amphibious landing along the coast. Without its flagship, its ability to menace Ukraine from the sea could be severely weakened. Moscow now says its main war goal is capturing Donbas, an eastern region of the 2 provinces that are already partly held by Russian-backed separatists and that Russia wants Kyiv to cede. Now for the latest on the war in Ukraine, let's go to Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther, who is standing by live in Lviv. Philip, what more can you tell us?
Well, look, as you mentioned, there has been a warning from the Russian Defense Ministry that there is going to be an increase in missile strikes on the capital city, Kyiv. And before that warning even came in today, we already heard those explosions, or rather we heard from eyewitnesses who had heard and seen those explosions on the outskirts of the capital city. Those, of course, the ones you just described on a missile factory in Kyiv. This also, by the way, missile factory, maybe not a coincidence, now that we're hearing from a senior defense official from the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., saying that it was indeed, in their view, 2 Ukrainian missiles that sank the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, around 48 hours ago. This was a contested story. Remember, it was Ukraine that said that it was its missiles that sank the ship. Russia says it was a fire that caused an explosion on board, and that then the ship sank while it was being towed to port. Any which way, it's seen as a very big military and also a symbolic success, this one, for Ukraine. And it is being celebrated here by people online, but also in person, because this ship had turned into, or rather Ukraine's reaction to it, had turned into a symbol of defiance because it was involved in the very first days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So this is something that is seen as very, very significant. And this confirmation, or at least this point of view, this analysis from the Pentagon coming in the last few minutes, is seen as a very significant confirmation of what the Ukrainian army says happened to the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet.
Very briefly, Philip, with those imminent attacks in the capital, Kyiv, what are people going to do next? Are they going to use the humanitarian corridors, or what are you hearing?
Well, it's not necessarily going to lead to a direct escape. From our reporters in Kyiv right now, we heard that this is a city that is trying to get back to normal. The people were outside going for walks, and in fact, there hasn't been an increase of missile strikes on any civilian targets so far, and that appears to not be in the plans, at least according to the Russian Defense Ministry. I can tell you, though, that also here in western Ukraine, in the city of Lviv, we have heard more air raid sirens over the last 24 hours than we had over the last 3 days, and indeed there have been air raid sirens throughout the country. So there might be a little bit of renewed nervousness coming to those cities that felt pretty safe, at least over the last few days. This city definitely, the capital city, Kyiv, as well. It's, of course, a completely different story in the east of the country.
Philip, thanks. Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther reporting live for us from Lviv, Ukraine. Africa's largest gathering of game developers recently ended. Their goal was to help the gaming industry meet the demand for African-made content and boost the potential of local talent. Most of the games on the market are from the US, Europe, and Japan, but African content is negligible, according to Alexander Poon, founder of the Dream Shots. Poon says there's a lot of content that is new and has not yet been fully explored. The event has attracted 2,500 developers, coders, designers, investors, and publishers. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our new Facebook page, facebook.com/VOA Africa. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.